Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you very much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. Now, today we're going to talk about Trinidad, right? And the fact that Trinidad and the Bahamas, I believe, seem to be the only countries in the Anglo-Caribbean who have not yet recognized Palestine as a full state in the United Nations, among the Nation states, or among the United Nations group of states, now, or nation states, I should say, right? So the fact of the matter is that Trinidad has not yet recognized Palestine as being a full state, right? So it means, therefore, that it perhaps does not believe in the two-state solution, right? That is perhaps the question. Does Trinidad and Tobago believe in the two-state solution? That it seems that a large number, I should say, of the countries of the world do believe in, that Palestine should have its full statehood and should not be under the auspices of Israel. Now, it was interesting to note that 15 countries voted recently in the United Nations to, whether or not they recognized Palestine or would like to recognize Palestine as a full state. And we have 12 saying, yes, they would like to see Palestine having full state or achieving that status. And three, well, among the three was the United States of America, which decided that it would not vote, or it voted no, I believe, suggesting that, they have to be on the side of Israel, and whatever Israel decides, that's the side that they would take. I found that to be interesting. Now, one of the things that is interesting in our world today is the D word, which I have always been saying on this program, on the show, deception. Deception is a very, very prominent word and is often used in geopolitics, right? In the political realm. Now, what is happening is that people often believe that Israel runs the show and that Israel is leading what is happening and they're running the show in the United States. That is not true, right? The United States is actually hiding behind Israel while they are calling the shots. You make no mistake about that, right? Do not be deceived thinking that Israel is running the US's Congress. The Congress and the military-industrial complex run Israel, right? And they dictate what Israel should do and should not do. Believe me, the United States has the power, if it is in its will, to have Israel, stop what it's doing, right? To foment peace and to have this ceasefire, to achieve the ceasefire that we have been yearning for. The question is, and I've been asking that question, will a ceasefire or will the two-state solution solve the problem in the Middle East between the Israelis and the Palestinians? I would say no, because if the United States continues to have that ambition, that goal of maintaining or of achieving full spectrum dominance, which is its quest to dominate the entire world, the entire globe, including the Middle East, then there will be no peace. Because you can't have peace when you're foisting your will upon people. And that is the mission of the United States, to foist its will and its mission, its goals, its ambitions upon people. People don't like that. And once you begin to foist your vision of the world upon people, they will not like you and there is going to be war, right? Because let us say, for example, it's almost like a religion. Not because I'm a Christian, it means therefore that I should force someone else to be a Christian, because God does not believe in that also, right? He says, whomsoever will. So you preach the gospel, and the gospel is the best thing in the world that could ever happen to anybody. I believe with all my heart. But you cannot force people, because love cannot be forced onto people, even when you think that that is the best choice for them. And parents should know that they have their children, and sometimes their children are walking down the wrong path, and they're trying to tell them, look, the path on which you're treading is not the right path. But when they reach a certain age, there's nothing you can do, right? You only can shed your tears, because if you should force them, if you should continue to protect them throughout their adult life, then these people are not going to be free, right? You want your children to grow into being free adults where they have the ability, the capacity to make what? Intelligent choices and decisions, some of which, by the way, will have negative consequences, but that is the nature of freedom, right? So the people in the Islamic world, in the people who are Muslim in that part of the world, most of them in the Middle East, do not want freedom and democracy as the United States think that they want it in. They think what they have is freedom and democracy. And you just have to leave them, because that is what they think, right? And it is not the United States' purpose, or it is not its right, right? Because if God doesn't do it, and God is sovereign of the universe, and we keep on hearing about this, this manifest destiny, as if God is the one who has given the United States the sovereign power and the sovereign authority to go and foist its democracy and Christian values, rather, upon the world. But the fact of the matter is that God has given the United States and no nation in this world no such mandate, right? Because in the first place, we know that the kingdoms of this world is not of our lords, right? It does not belong to God, it belongs to the devil. When Adam and Eve sinned, right? Because God had given to Adam the authority of this earth, right? To rule this kingdom, right? But Adam ceded that power to the devil when he decided to sin, right? Because he actually did not believe the instructions given to him by God, right? So the whole matter of the United States running around the world saying that it is doing the will of God, right? And then associating themselves with the Jews, with the Israelis, a people whom God had rejected because they rejected God. So God has rejected them as a nation. They are no longer considered to be God's people as a nation. As a nation, Israel is not God's people. As an ethnic group, each person, just like you have other nations of the world, be they, Ireland, right, or Trinidad, or Barbados, the United States, right? All of these countries, if they decide to follow God, then they will become a part of God's kingdom, right? And they will become a part of spiritual Israel, right? Just like we have the physical Babylon, and we also have spiritual Babylon, we also have physical Israel, and we also have what? Spiritual Israel. And spiritual Israel means that you are doing the will of God. Right now, as we see it, the United States, right? Neither the United States nor Israel is doing the will of God, right? They are actually doing the will of the devil. Because the Bible says that my kingdom is not of this world. But let's go back to the fact that the Trinidadians, there's an article that was written in the um in the Trinidadian Guardian newspaper. Yeah, they have a Guardian newspaper. Also, let me see if I can pull up that article and read a couple statements from that newspaper. That's the major newspaper from Trinidad, the Trinidadian Guardian newspaper. I have not read it for a long time, and their paper is very good. I must say that they really produce some quality news and commentary. Now, we have here TNT must support Palestine as full UN member, right? So they're saying remember now that for those of you who do not know, the islands of Trinidad and Tobago are twin republics. They're joined together, and we call them the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So yeah, they're two distinct countries on the same, but they are joined together constitutionally, if you understand what I'm saying. Now, the United States of America, a few days ago, vetoed yet another bid at the United Nations Security Council by the Palestinian Authority, the effective government of Palestine, to become a full member state of the World of Nations body, essentially saying that such an ascension should be dependent on Israel's say-so. So that is what the editor of this paper is saying, that the United States is suggesting that if Palestine is going to achieve full statehood, right, it means therefore that Israel will have that authority to decide whether or not the United States. The United States doesn't have anything to do with it. This is what, and I think that is what Biden also is implying, or has already implied, based on what the few statements that he has made. The continuing bias of the United States, of the USA, in favor of Israel and against Palestine and its people reflects what President Joe Biden has said and demonstrated to be America's unwavering support for Israel, right? So he is supporting Israel, the Biden administration. And one of the things that we need to understand is the hypocrisy that we see on the left, on the US left. Many of you, and I have been saying this on this program, that the universities and the political realm, all they think about is ideology. You see a lot of these professors, they're protesting, and I'm not going to say all of them, but the large majority of them, they're just defending an ideology along with their students. They don't care, right? But people will die for ideologies. And we must be convicted. Whatever you believe, you must have that conviction and be able to live out that conviction. That is what it's all about. And that is why Christ said that not all that say that they're Christians, or not all that say that they're Jews are Jews, right? But he that doeth the will of my Father, then that person is a Christian. So not taking on the name that you're left wing and you believe in freedom does not necessarily mean that you are convicted and that you have that inner belief that that is so, right? But we see people, even in the news media, worshiping the ideologies of the left or the right. You ought not to worship any of these ideologies. You can believe in one and try to live those principles out in your life, but not to behave in this sort of hypocritical manner as you find happening or see happening in the United States. The kind of engagement by the USA should be contextualized in the reality of Israel having captured and killed thousands of Palestinians, driven even more off their islands, and occupied increasing portions of Palestine over a 75-year-plus period, and with brute force, right? Brute force. And everything that Israel is doing, by the way, is US sanctioned, is US approved. The US only operates behind the scenes, and then it begins to make these statements to suggest that it wants to broker peace. But as we have learned from the Intercept news article last week, the United States does not want a two-state solution. The United States does not want a two-state solution. They do not want peace, because if you have peace, then it's going to affect the progress of the military-industrial complex and the arms industry, and lots of profits will not be made. Very important that we understand that. It should also be noted that the US president that is Harry Truman, recognized Israel's declaration of itself as a state in 1947 and welcomed the Jewish nation to the UN body 2 years after it had gone over Palestine. No? So this is a country, the United States of America, which the country was not so much pro-Jews. You know that the Jews had a warm time even in Europe. All right, they were persecuted and they were treated extremely badly. Let me see if I can get my thing down. All right, yeah, so they were treated very badly in Europe and also in North America, in the United States. And here you have this, country being formed by the British and then accepted in the United Nations as 2 years after. Right? Now, on this show, we are not suggesting here that we should show any aggression to the Jews, but we are also suggesting that no aggression should be shown to any country or to any ethnic group or races of people on the planet. Right? We should not be showing any form of aggression and abuse. So we have the US decision to veto Palestine's bid for full UN membership came against the support of 12 of the 15 members of the Security Council who voted for Palestine's acceptance, while Britain and Switzerland abstained. Right? So Britain is doing the same bidding and behaving the same way that in which the United States is behaving. Right? It's not their ambition, it's not their goal, it's not their quest to have Palestine become a full member state of the United Nations. It is very clear. They have made it very clear. Now, listen to what the editor continues to say. In its refusal to agree to the Palestinian attempt to gain the full UN status, the USA ambassadors essentially argued about the conflict which they contend exists within Palestine between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, the latter's recent aggression against Israel and what they consider to be Palestine's general state of unacceptance for full membership. It is very, very complex and nuanced what is going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And it's very important that we also do not take sides. Very important that we refuse from taking sides. We can stand for the correct principle, and we might say that perhaps if you have a two-state solution, it might reduce the level of violence, but we just don't know. These are speculations too. Because look at Haiti, for example, and the Dominican Republic. Different situation that is happening here, but something that we can apply. There are two distinct states, right? And two distinct countries, and they are represented as such in the United Nations. However, there are issues here that have not yet been resolved. And because these issues and tensions have not been resolved, we see ongoing conflicts, not in the same way in which it's happening in Palestine and in Israel. But you can see that perhaps just to say that you're going to have a two-state solution does not mean that afterwards you're going to have peace, right? Because at the end of the day, these two nations sit on the same land and they have to divide land. And once you have these borders, you're going to have problems. And these long, conflicts, right, that have been there for centuries, for years in this case, for decades, is just not going to be, or are not going to be resolved by just having a two-state solution. It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. We can only speculate. We can only speculate. And as I've said, the root cause of what is happening is the United States' quest for full spectrum dominance, to police the world, to control all the resources and all the peoples of the world. So that is what is happening. And if that doesn't stop, which I do not think is going to stop, which the Bible has already predicted it will not stop, then we will have no peace, right? We will have no peace. Now, there is another article that was written from in the Trinidadian Express. And I think that might be domiciled in Tobago, the Trinidadian Express. And it says here, and I think this article was written actually by a Jamaican, that is Abdub, I think his name is, and he's saying T's Palestine hypocrisy, and TNT stands for Trinidad and Tobago. Last week, the government of Barbados announced that it would be recognizing the state of Palestine. This week, our own government in Jamaica recognized the state of Palestine. And he went on to say that, let me see if I could open this, yes. So he went on to say that these recognitions came only a few days after the United States vetoed at the United Nations Security Council a vote to grant Palestine full member status. The United States was the only country to do so, right? So the Democratic Party, which many people believe is a party that wants freedom and wants inclusion, right? That's the word, inclusion. So we have diversity and equity and inclusion. Those are the words that is often, or that are often used rather, by the Democratic Party, right? Those are the words that are often used by them. But it doesn't seem like they are using those words from a convicted heart. They just represent ideologies. They are just symbols of ideologies to deceive you. And you run and you dance and you think that that is what they want, right? And we say that Trump is the only one that seeks authoritarianism, while rather, what's his name, Joe Biden seeks inclusion, and he wants peace. He doesn't want any conflict in the world. Now, what world are you living in, and what are you reading? Because you have many people, including the people that you see whining and dining at these universities and protesting, many of whom have voted for the Democratic Party, many of whom have voted for Joseph Biden, because they thought that Washington was going to be a principled Washington and to demonstrate this sort of inclusion that they would like to see in the world. The diversity and the equity and the inclusion, the liberté and the fraternité and the brotherhood, the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, right? Because we live in this inclusive world. And the Democratic Party is working toward accomplishing that feat. And that is a lie. That is a lie. And many of you have embraced it, because you fail to think for yourselves. You find yourselves in groups and you call your friends here and there and you talk all sorts of nonsense. And you believe that that is so, right? Because that is where what you think you see and you're hearing, but that is not the reality. One must commend the leadership of Jamaica and Barbados for standing up on principled positions and taking a strong leadership role. The recognition of and the timing to recognize Palestine fully exposed the hypocrisy of certain nations and their leaders, including Trinidad and Tobago, right? That was interesting. But yet, Barbados and Jamaica did not stand up for the Haitians, right? They stood up for Palestine and Israel, not Palestine and Israel. Well, but they're standing up for they've taken, based on our understanding, a principled decision. Not that it will solve the problem, as I'm suggesting, but at least that's the best thing that they could do, right? Because we know that Jamaica and Barbados cannot solve the problem in that area, right? The bigger nations, including the United States and the members of the United Nations Security Council. They're the ones, if they had the will, who could solve the problem. I mean, they could not solve the entire problem because no man really can solve the intractable problems of humanity, right? We are complex beings, and nobody will be able but God to solve the intractable problems that beset us. And we've got to understand that. And many of you are looking to your political leaders to solve all the problems of the nation, but they do not have that capacity, right? Because they are just mere humans, creatures of the soil like you and I. Why do you continue to worship them as you do? Why do you continue to idolize them as you do? Right? And many of you do. You find all the time to listen to their speeches and to run after them and to be in their presence. And when it's time to be in the presence of God, you don't care because you think that God is inferior to a creature of the soil. Right? Who are these people? Who are these people? That is the question that you need to ask. Who are these people? And why are you idolizing them in the way that you idolize them? Respect them, because that is what the Bible enjoins, that we should respect our government. Right? But he did not. The Bible does not enjoin that we should idolize them. In fact, we should idolize no one, including your spouses or your children or your family members. You should idolize no man, no one. Right? That is what you need to understand. And I think a lot of our problems in the world is because of idolizing people, idolizing organizations, idolizing philosophy, idolizing ideologies, right? Because when you look at the campuses at the US, what is happening on Columbia, it's almost like it's a cult-like movement, right? It doesn't look very real to me. And what I do know, even though I cannot put my finger on it, money is behind it. Somebody has or is financing the protest actions happening on the campuses of the United States, certainly. Because when you look into the faces of those young adults, many of them haven't got a clue. Many of them haven't got a clue of what is happening in the world, right? And they're at universities. They are at universities. But it has never been the quest, I should say, the plan of the military-industrial complex to educate its citizens. Because if it does, if it educates them about the world and the dynamics and the complexities and the nuances of this world, then the people of the United States would revolt against US government. And they can't allow that to happen. So what you do, you send them to a 4-year college and allow them to get their PhDs just to be indoctrinated in a certain ideology, right? Whether it's right-wing or it is left-wing. And neither right-wing nor left-wing view or understanding of the world is correct, right? You have to have an open mind to understand knowledge so that you can glean wisdom and understanding. You have to have an open mind because lots of what you see is not what you get, right? Even though it looks logical And you tell me it's rational. Look at this. Yes, the argument is rational, but it might not be the truth. Rational, it sounds rational, it looks rational, but it is not the truth. And that is what you've got to understand. Now, look at talking about Trinidad and Tobago. I just filled up this for you to listen to so I can end the video right here. I think I'm talking too long, but let me have you listen to this thing here. So many advertisements. I wish I could stop these advertisements coming in when I'm opening up my different icons or whatever. Now let's get to this piece of audio. Let me share my screen with you so that you can see what is happening. Okay, so here we have Dr. Wayne, is it Frederick Wayne or Wayne Frederick? He's the president of Howard University, and Howard University is a university located in Washington, D.C. Incidentally, my alma mater, I taught there, and I am a past student of that institution. Now, we have the guy here on the left. He's the president, Wayne Frederick, I believe. Families, Frederick Wayne or Wayne Frederick, I'm not sure. When people have two names like that, it sometimes confuses me. Now, this is Dr. Keith Rowley, and he is receiving an honorary doctorate from Howard University, right? So this is Dr. Keith Rowley. This guy's face looks familiar, but I don't think I know him. He might have come there after I'd left. So this is the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Remember now that these two nations, well, it's really one nation because they are under the realm of a republic. And he is the president. That's why we call the Twin Republic of Trinidad, not the Twin Republics, but the Twin Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And you guys can correct me, the Trinidadians can correct me if I'm getting it wrong. So he's Dr. Keith Rowley or Rowley. Now, it says United States President Joe Biden has congratulated Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on receiving an honorary degree from Howard University, saying he did not know Rowley or Rowley was so talented. All right, so I'll allow you to listen, or I have to take this out so you can listen to what this is saying. All right, so go ahead.
United States President Joe Biden has congratulated Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on receiving an honorary degree from Howard University, saying he did not know Rowley was so talented. Biden was delivering the feature address at Howard University's 155th commencement convocation ceremony at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Both Biden and Rowley were conferred with honorary Doctor of Letters degrees from the university. Prior to being presented with his degree, the Prime Minister was described as a renowned social and political leader, pioneering statesman and scholar by Howard University President Dr. Wayne Frederick. Frederick said Rowley was a major player in the political arena and has been instrumental in strengthening the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States. He hailed Rowley's leadership of Trinidad and Tobago and his work to improve energy, education, and other sectors. Frederick also lauded the Prime Minister's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic as exemplary, saying lives were saved and the spread of the virus was lessened due to Rowley's quick and decisive actions. He noted Rowley came from humble beginnings to becoming a scientist and volcanologist, as well as an author. Howard University applauds your living legacy of achievement and applauds you as a shining example of our core values of leadership, excellence, and truth and service, said Frederick. During his speech, Biden took note of Rowley's accomplishments, saying, Prime Minister, I didn't know you were so talented. I just thought you were a foreign policy, Latin American guy. We got to talk. Biden also praised Rowley as a strong partner to the United States. All kidding aside, thank you for being a strong partner in the Caribbean and addressing climate change and supporting democracies across the Western Hemisphere, Biden told the Prime Minister. Frederick said later yesterday he was also inspired to establish the Eric Williams Endowed Chair in Caribbean Studies at the university. Rowley received congratulations and commendations from his PNM colleagues yesterday. The PNM stated, Congratulations, Dr. Rowley. We continue to take pride in you and your achievements. So happy to see that an organization of the caliber of Howard University has chosen to recognize your valuable contribution and your undoubted integrity as we have done so long before. PNM Public Relations Officer Rowley Singh said Rowley was doing the country proud and putting us on the world stage for good reason. Biden and Rowley were among 7 2023 Howard University honorary doctorate awardees. The others were Congressman James E. Clyburn, education benefactors Martha and Bruce Akarsh, health sciences trailblazer A. Eugene Washington, corporate director Benery Pratt Wiley. A number of commenters on social media congratulated and praised the prime minister yesterday after he received the honorary degree. Others criticized Howard University. One commenter said it was rewarding failure, while another said the people who gave the honorary degree should live in Trinidad and Tobago for 6 months.
Interesting. By the way, Dr. Rowley is not a very popular prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago. Lots of the people there do not see him as an effective prime minister, and they have not really appreciated the way in which he dealt with the pandemic, right? Many of them are really, really unhappy with his performance. Now, but it's one thing to be in the light of these global leaders because they set the trend and they tell you what you should think and how you should even view your leaders. You do not have that capacity to assess your leaders in the way how they should be evaluated, right? The global leaders and the people in these administrations are the ones who have that sort of intellectual dexterity, right? You don't have it. You and I don't have it, right? Because we are the goyim, right? We are the common man, and they are the elites, right? And they belong to a certain club, right? And you and I cannot be a part of that sort of elite club and elite group. It's interesting to note that for those of you who do not know, what's his name? Wayne Frederick, the president of Howard University, is also a native of Trinidad and Tobago, right? A doctor by training, and I think that he ascended to that position. Was it in 2018, 19, thereabout? That he got that position to be president of Howard University. Very interesting that as a native of Trinidad and Tobago, that he extended or conferred upon, I should say, such a prestigious and honorary doctorate. Well, Dr. Keith Rowley, he is a scientist, perhaps a doctor by training, not sure. But he was already a doctor, but to be conferring this honorary doctorate degree from Howard University on this prime minister. So obviously you can see that based on what Joe Biden said about him, that he has been excellent in his capacity as prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, even though most of the citizens there would not agree. And Joe Biden has itemized that among his greatest achievements would be working for climate change, because that is a buzzword in everything that they say. And also, he did an excellent job during the pandemic. So much I can't say no or I can't say yes. I don't know the man, but the Trinidadians who watch this program, you can state whether or not you agree with that, whether you think that Dr. Keith Rowley did an effective job and he's an effective advocate of climate change. And how do you think climate change is going to impact the goals, the democratic goals that of Trinidad and Tobago? How do you think it's going to enhance the economy and and also to improve on the social, conditions that in the island of Trinidad and Tobago? You can answer that question because I do not know that, right? But perhaps those citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, you could extend me that favor of responding to my questions. Now, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you will join me in another video. Tomorrow, I will be talking about another important topical matter. So please join me. So long. Ciao.